All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And Lloyd, welcome, man. So great to have you here. I love your last name, by the way.
It's a great last name.
It sure is.
Thank you so much for having me, Kevin.
Yeah. And,
we are the Thompson tribe.
I gotta give a shout out to James Schramko. James is the one that connected you and I. And what's really cool is I always love this, because when we get connected through a mutual friend that we both have so much respect for, you and I, right from the get-go, I mean, we've been talking for, I don't know, 20 minutes before we hit the record button. And it was like, it's like we've known each other for years, you know?
That's amazing, the context.
Yes. And you know, I'm going to tell a quick story about James, because you know, I ended up interviewing him for the podcast probably about a month and a half or so ago, 6-7 weeks ago. And he the person that he honored was a mutual friend of both mine and his, which is this gentleman, Yannick Silver. And after interviewing him for the podcast, you know, and I sent him the recording of it, I asked him, I was like, hey, now that you've, you know, had this experience, who else do you know that you feel I should really interview for the podcast? And he's like, well, I would definitely suggest Yannick. And I'm like, well, you know, I've been friends with Yannick since 99. And after you honored him, I'm like, dang, I need to reach out to Yannick. I already did that, and we already got that set. and I was like, I bet there's a bunch of other amazing entrepreneurs, you know, James, that I don't know that would be great people to interview. And he gets back to me and he's like, Kevin, I guarantee there's a bunch of entrepreneurs I know that you don't know. And it was like he was saying, like, challenge accepted and game on.
Throwing down the gambit.
and he introduced me to about 7 or 8 of his entrepreneur friends, and every single one of you have scheduled podcast interviews.
Wow.
And
I'm happy to be here.
What an amazing testament to the power of relationships. What an amazing example right there.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so Lloyd, I'm just going to say what I said to you before we hit the record button. After James introduced us, I started doing a little bit of research on you. I went to your website, and I'm like, you know what? I don't fully understand what Lloyd does, but I know James is raving about him, and I can tell, man, he does some really cool stuff and makes entrepreneurs' lives a whole lot easier. And I have really been looking forward to this interview. And so I want to start this interview, like I start everyone, is by turning it over to you so that we can set a little bit of context, and you can tell us, you know, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work that you do. And we'll just start there.
Yeah, let's go. All right. So, well, hi, everyone. My name's Lloyd, and I'm the founder of Virtual DOO. That's the DOO is Director of Operations. Okay. And so we help busy online business owners get out of the daily operations so they have time to focus on strategy, relationships, their passions, and shaking the tree for new business. And we do that by providing a director of operations on a fractional basis and access to my support team on a month-to-month retainer. And so then how do I do that? So that director of operations will lead their team, giving back that founder time. They will oversee their projects and operations, making the bumps smooth in the road. And we drive process improvements they can scale. And feedback accepted on the website. Like, that website needs some work. When you're looking at what goes on here, what do they do? So my background of sort of paint a picture of how I ended up here. I've always been a problem solver, and that's my passion. And I would say, I can go back as early as I remember, but a significant moment would have been around the age of 12, where before solving a problem, I created one. I broke the family computer. And that was because we had someone came over, and I think they were upgrading the operating system or something like that. And they opened up this black screen, and they were typing in some what looked like magic spells to me. I thought, well, that looks really interesting. And when they left and they'd done what they needed to do, I thought, well, I'm going to have a crack at that. So I opened up this black screen. I remembered a few of these magic spells, and I typed them in, and yeah, broke the family computer. And so we had to call this person back. And so he was like, okay, I can see what's gone on here. I had to sort of go and fix it back up again. And I said, no, I'm so sorry. I won't do this again. I won't do this again. Until about 2 weeks later, where I felt like I really knew what I was doing this time, because I saw some more things that he was typing. I typed them in again. And guess what? I broke the family computer again. And so that when we called this person back, he said to me, look, if you're going to keep on doing this, you should really learn what you're doing. And he presented me the MS-DOS 5 manual. And he said, read that. And so I did. And I wasn't really into reading at that time, but I really connected with this probably very dry book telling me how to program, basic program procedures to operate the computer. And that got me into programming. And so that was the first decade of my career. I became a programmer after leaving university. And then later on, in the corporate world where I was a programmer, I eventually started technical leading larger teams. And I found that I had a skill of taking the complex and being able to explain it to larger groups of people. And we were just starting to get more and more remote teams. And if I could take the challenge, whether it was a people or technical issue, and get everyone to understand this issue, that was the problem I enjoyed solving. So I really latched onto that. And so basically I moved into more people leadership role, and it became more apparent to me that this idea where many businesses really need to have an office, they really need to have a setup, especially in this very virtual world, really started to question that. And this was long before COVID has proven and made so much of a norm of how good it can be to have a global team and how efficient you can be. And so just a couple of years ago, and this is probably going to lead up to the punchline of where we're going to go with this conversation, I met someone who helped me start a business. And that was where I thought, how can I use these skills that I've got and apply them in a business and get out of corporate? Because what COVID showed to me, actually, there was some benefits. I mean, it was a lot of bad things happened. So some of the benefits were lockdown for me meant that I could go surfing every day instead of a commute. And I thought, I want to continue doing this. So the roots of virtual DOO came out of COVID, actually, and meeting someone who helped me start a business.
Wow, very cool. So now I'm curious, do you surf daily? Do you still surf daily?
Yeah, I do. In fact, I would say that's one of my almost a KPI. I try to get out every single day unless it's really bad out there. But that's not just for my physical health. That's putting some white space to get away from what you're doing. And it's almost like meditation. You get out there in the surf, and it gives you some time to sort of relax. But then sometimes my best ideas come to me while I'm in the surf, while I'm getting away from it. So yeah, every day I try and get out.
He doesn't even live anywhere near you. In fact, he lives in Florida I'm just having a brain fart where he lives in Florida. But he lives in Florida, but a friend of mine, Brian, surfs daily and has for years. And for that reason alone, I should connect you guys. In fact, I will connect you.
Yes, please.
Because
I love
that. He has the means and the wherewithal to travel and go surfing wherever he wants, whenever he wants. And that is a very important thing for him. Surfing, it's like you said, it's a KPI. I love that comment. That's one of my KPIs. Is my surfing, and that is amazing. That is brilliant. But I'll get you guys connected you guys are both great entrepreneurs doing amazing things and live in completely different parts of the country. But that surfing thing, you guys will totally connect on that. And I guarantee you guys will just end up going surfing together and get to know each other.
And sometimes that's how some of the best relationships are made. Last year I went to San Diego. And I didn't know anybody in San Diego. And I messaged a few people and I said, hey, do you know some people who can connect with me, who are surfers, who can take me out on the local breaks? And there was this guy Ning, whose surname I can't remember. He's a copywriter. And someone connected him with me on WhatsApp. I ended up knocking at his door at some random address at 6:30 in the morning. And he came out foggy-eyed and he said, I've got a board for you. We're going to a place called Bird Rock. And I was like, right on.
That's awesome.
Great connections are made like this.
That's right. That's right. So, well, I really, man, that's awesome, Lloyd. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's, you know, it's a beautiful thing. I love hearing from entrepreneurs who have just taken their natural, unique abilities of just stuff that they love doing and have turned that into a business where they get to make a big impact in this world. And kudos to you. You know, I mean, you just got this smile on your face all the time, and you know, and that's a sign of an entrepreneur who's making a big impact in the world. You know, and so
thanks, Kevin.
So okay, so now that we've got some context set here, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Lloyd, I am just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of valuable relationships.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to give credit to that person. His name's Ashley Benjamin, who gave me at the age of 12 the MS-DOS 5 manual and had the confidence in me that I'm actually going to look at this thing and give it a crack, because that really influenced my setup in how I got into corporate world and how I got a job. But that's not going to be the focus of this conversation. I really want to give credit to actually our mutual connection who introduced us, James Schramko. And this, funnily enough, ties back to surfing. And so how we met, a few years ago, I'm trying to put a thing, maybe about four years ago, I had started giving surf reports for fun. I had a job. This is just giving surf reports. I would run down to my beach. I would take photos of the beach because I was one of the first people in the water. I would hide my camera in the bush. And then when I came back, I'd upload the photos. I'd say it's 2 to 4 foot of freshwater beach today. And this is, you know, take this type of board. And then I started giving audio reports to what was effectively a growing WhatsApp group. And it was just a hobby. And so my Instagram, where I was uploading these pictures, started getting a few followers from the locals because they were subscribing to these reports. And one of these people was James Schramko. And I didn't know James. I just saw that he was a business coach, didn't really realize how big his following was. And so I saw that he was liking my comments. And one day I was out in the surf and I saw him and I said, "Oh, are you that business coach guy?" And he said, yes, I am that business coach guy. And I said, well, you know, I've been really thinking about what I want to do next. You know, and I talked about my skills. I said, you know, I'm someone who leads teams. I oversee projects and operations. I drive process improvement. This is what I do. But I just wonder if there's some way I could set up a business where I'm working remotely, where I have flexibility over my time, because that's what's important to me. He said, what could I do? And he said, you sound to me like an integrator. I said, an integrator? That sounds like some kind of a technical role. It's not a term I'd heard. And nowadays, I would actually refer to that more as director of operations, or in larger businesses, I'd call that a COO. But I said, an integrator. And he said, yeah, look, what to do, Lloyd? There's a book called Rocket Fuel. Have a look at that. And Rocket Fuel talks about the relationship between the visionaries, quite often the CEO is the person who is working on the strategy and the relationships and things like that, shaking the tree for new business. And the integrator, who's the person who focuses on the run and getting things done, managing the team. And I thought, I read this book and it instantly resonated with me. And I thought, wow, I am an integrator. That's exactly me. And so I went back to him and said, James, yeah, I read this book. Yeah, this is definitely me. So what could we do? And he says, well, perhaps you could start a business as a fractional integrator. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, okay. So, what, serve a couple of clients, run a couple of businesses? He said, yeah, I think there's space for that. So he introduced me to a few people, and I got talking with someone who had a large e-commerce, and I listened to their challenges about how they were running their team and wanted to put processes in place. And I thought, oh, I can solve this problem. I do this in much, I've been doing this in corporate world, much larger teams and so forth. So James helped me start my business from the get-go and became my coach and mentor, and he still is today. And, just thinking about some of the things he does, he helps me close the gaps where, say, sales and marketing, that was something that I didn't have experience in corporate world. That's definitely not my strong suit. Or how to set up the structure I'd have in the business, the legal entities, the tax, the accounting. I wouldn't know how to do that. Soundboarding ideas and just being a person for support. As an entrepreneur, a veteran entrepreneur, you would know, Kevin, that you're going to hit walls sometimes and have good ideas but sometimes bad ideas and lessons to be learned. So he's just been there as a support since the get-go. And it reminds me that you either get success or a lesson. So that's how all of this begun. Yeah. And the payoff to me has been huge. I'm working less than I am in corporate world. When I am working, it feels like flow. I feel like I'm building something. Mm-hmm. I can work from anywhere. I employ people from anywhere in the world. What really matters is, can we service the person in the time zone we're working for? Yeah. And they're interesting clients. And it's been great. And I feel like I'm learning again. So this is definitely an ode to James because it's made a huge difference to my life.
Wow. So what year was it that you met James?
Probably met James back in 2019, 2020.
So right when COVID was happening and stuff, right?
Well, this was it. While we were locked down, our freedom that we did have was that we were allowed to surf. So we could have conversations 2 meters apart at the beach. And I think our conversations about business really started to kick in around 2020, and then the business started in early 2021. So we're still pretty young business, but there's no way I could have gone this far this quick without a support of a mentor like James.
Yeah. So you're 3 years into this and out of the corporate world now doing your own thing, that you are just having an amazing experience and using your gifts, your talents, your abilities to serve other entrepreneurs and just loving life.
I'm loving it. Yeah. And it's evolved a lot. And so actually I should say it's only been 2 yees. I've been talking about, it's been brewing for some time before.
Okay.
I really love how it's gone. I can't see myself ever going back to corporate. Maybe one day we'll serve corporate clients, but at the moment our clients are more, it's been a pick and mix of e-commerce education, marketers, relationship therapists. I had one of those, someone who does social coaching. It's been an absolute pick. And I'm sort of figuring out more and more, what niche we serve, but we still end up taking on other online businesses where the core problems of leading the team, overseeing the projects, and driving process improvement are common for many of them. Yeah. And while we've been going further down and supporting particularly marketers, because they're very high visionary types. And I just generally find with marketers, things like putting in systems and processes, while they could do it, it probably kills their soul to do it, to put in something repetitive. They just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So that they seem to be the types that are more willing to reach out and have someone partner with them and focus on that area of business.
Yeah.
So,
For a visionary, they're just like, yeah, they'd rather have a needle through the eye than have to put together systems, you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, you know. So okay, so now that we've done, I want to ask one more question, because I love digging into this a little bit, just a little bit deeper. So if you look at all that has transpired with you and James, and what's come from that original where you guys met, you know, because of surfing and all of that kind of stuff, and now, you know, 3 years later from having met him, if you look at all that has transpired, what is just an example of one thing that, you know, where you got to make a really big impact, and you know, also hands down, that would have never happened if not for the relationship that you and James have together?
yeah, I think the first thing was just that first customer of mine, and I could see the pain that the founder was having. He was doing 16-hour days, and he was scattergunning his team with tasks every day, like just running on adrenaline, it seemed. And he was scattergunning the team because he didn't know any other way. He didn't know, well, actually, perhaps we can put in a rhythm here where we work out what everyone needs to be doing for the next 2 weeks. And then they can work together and row the boat in the same direction. But it felt like the emergency department, or that game Whack-A-Mole, where you have to keep like the mole's over here and you whack it and it pops up in another hole. And he just didn't know another way. And so I was able to work with him and put in rhythms where people know what they're going to be working on for the next 2 weeks. And that meant that he got more time. And it also meant that the team felt like they weren't working in an emergency department anymore. So they felt more and more relaxed. And eventually, after we'd put in the rhythm, someone in their team had said, hey, look, I see what you're doing here. Do you reckon that I could be someone who eventually steps into this role? And I said, yeah, I think you'd be great. Yeah, we can, you know, I spoke to the founder and said, you know, can you help train and support and guide this person into this role? And so that's exactly what we did. So now this person, you know, we ran this on a month-to-month engagement, and we were able to help someone in their business eventually step up and then them take over the reins as the COO or director of operations. And then we retracted.
Wow.
And so that was great for not only the founder, it was great for the person who stepped up in that role. It was great for the team, because then they were able to have rhythms that are predictable and feel more calm. And it was amazing for me, because I was like, it gave me the confidence to know that I can do this. I can really help people here.
Yeah.
And it also helped me evolve my offering. It made me think, you know what, actually, I'm not here to entrench myself in a business. I'm there to actually make myself redundant. The success criteria is if I can make the operation smooth and running, what I really want is them to refer me and introduce me to other people and say, Lloyd and his team have done a great job here. And so while you might think that seemed like an odd way for the engagement to end, sort of leaving, but I think that's actually now become more of a focus for our business, that we might be there as a transition, so we can come in and get the operation running smooth. And if they eventually do want to hire a full-time director of operations, or if they do want to support their own team so that they see what's running and they're like, okay, cool, I can run this now.
Yep.
We're there. So that first introduction, that first client just helped me get going, and it helped that team. And yeah, now we've been off to the races ever since.
Yeah. And I have no idea, you see, when I hear you share that, Lloyd, I think about like, wow, so not only did you guys win, And not only did the founder or whatever of that company win, but all the people on his team that won. And I don't know how many people were on his team, but they all win because now they're just like, I can take a breath. I can breathe again, and this high pressure, this whatever you want, this pressure cooker situation is now alleviated, and they can just breathe again, and they can just do their thing and use their gifts and their abilities inside of that company. And not only that, I think most people don't think about this, but all those people on the team, I bet most of them they have spouses and children. And when the pressure cooker situation at work, trust me, that stuff bleeds over to home. It totally bleeds over to home and those home relationships. And most, and I want to point that out to you, especially because, you might be saving marriages. You might be saving relationships with parents and their children because, I remember years ago, when I used to run this training company, I remember one time we got a call in our office from this little girl that thanked us for giving her dad back to her. And I'm like, oh, gosh. And I remember talking with one of our clients too, who told me how he's like, my boys were playing football in the living room. And they broke the lamp, and he's like, man, I bit their heads off because, I was just so frustrated because now I'm going to replace that lamp versus, if we had expendable money, who cares about that damn lamp? I just bit my kid's head off, and he's like, they're just being boys, And so, we don't think about this stuff. And then, now we want to start looking bigger picture. How many companies do you guys do that for? How many lives are being impacted through those companies? How many people do they serve that they can now serve more effectively because of what you guys do? And see, when we really start looking at this stuff,
Yeah, I never really looked at it. That makes me feel so much. Yeah, it's a really enlightening thought just to see how that's translates through to family life, and something I've never really deeply reflected on. So that's an amazing impact.
And when we realize the kind of impact that I tell you what, it's inspiring. That's what inspires me. That's what inspires me is just think I will never know the real ripple effect of all that I've done in this world, but I know it's big and it's cool thinking about it. And it's like, that's inspiring, man. It makes me want to do more. I want to do more of this. I want to do more. I show up differently when we realize and we just think about it. We just show up differently. And of course, people respond to us differently because of how we show up. We're in control.
I just get excited by solving problems. I'm like, I hear this problem. And the more they tell me their problem, I've got to resist smiling because I'm like, it's not that I'm enjoying their problem. It's just like, I know the solution to this one, or I know how I can do this for you, or I've got a team member who's going to go in there and just sort that out for you. It gets me excited.
Yeah, totally. So, well, Lloyd, for anybody listening to this going, man, Kev, I really like this Lloyd guy. I like how Lloyd shows up. I like what Lloyd stands for. How can they get more info on what you guys are doing and stuff?
Yeah. So you can head to my website. That's virtualdoo.com, or you can just email me. So that's Lloyd, bit of an odd spelling here, LLOYD @virtualdoo.com.
Awesome. Well, Lloyd, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart. Any last thing you'd like to say before we call it a wrap?
Oh, do you know what? I just would like to, if we got a couple of minutes, I'd love to credit a couple more people on the way, actually. I'd thank my parents for being open-minded. I mean, I came from a kind of a pretty working class military town, and most people wouldn't have gone to university there. And so they were open-minded about me taking on debt and going to university and study computer engineering and they supported that. They might have been thinking, I don't know if this is a good idea, mate, taking all this debt, but they supported it. And that was amazing. I moved to Australia 15 years ago, and I followed one of my university friends out here, and he got married out here.
Okay.
And he was a flatmate at university. We learned to surf together in England, of all places, not exactly the surfing capital. And I came out here to his wedding, saw how good Australia was. I'm from south of London, for the benefit of the listener. And I just thought, I want to live here. This is great. I want to be in Australia. And so this friend, Luke Larea, he got me set up in Australia. He said, hey, you want to work? Here are some great people you should talk to. They work for these companies. Perhaps they can make you aware of job opportunities. And he set me up, and I had my first decade here working in an investment bank, which really got me rooted in Australia. It really set me up. And he's just been a friend that he's someone I can always trust. If there's ever if I ever need something, or he'd always be there. And funny thing about the lockdown, I mean, my friend Luke, he's married with 4 kids, and in the lockdown, his wife called me and said, Lloyd, we're concerned about you, and we know you live on your own. Do you want to lock down with us? And I said, Liz, this is his wife, Liz, I'm worried about you. You got my friend Luke and 4 kids. Are you going to be all right at home with those for lockdown? But yeah, my good friend Luke Larea, and his family, actually. And then finally, here's an odd one, my yoga teacher. I've been doing yoga for 11 years, and that keeps me both physically and mentally balanced. And my yoga teacher reminds me that I'm a being, not a doing. And so those are some people I just wanted to mention along the way who also definitely had an impact on my life.
I love it. I love it. Well, and here, I think that's awesome. And what's your yoga teacher's name?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Celeste Ferraris.
Celeste.
How could I forget to mention? Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we got to give Celeste a shout out. And,
yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting because one thing I've discovered over the years is that no matter how successful somebody is, no matter how big of a business they run, no matter who they are, no matter how great things look on the outside looking in, there's not a person on the face of this earth that gets too much appreciation. We all crave more appreciation, more genuine appreciation. And so, that's why I love giving shout outs to James. That's why I love giving you the opportunity to give shout outs to Ashley, to James, to your parents, to Luke, and to Celeste. I mean, just we get to, I get to help facilitate you giving a shout out to them and just sending some appreciation and love their way too. And I'll make sure you get this recording so you can share it with them. And so, thank
you so much, Kevin. And I really love what you're doing here. It's such a great show.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it's it wouldn't be that way if I was doing it all by myself. So I appreciate you for the role that you played in this as well. And Lloyd, thank you so much again. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.